It's funny that he said that it's hard to say predictive analytics analyst, because that is why when I went from ESPN to the NFL Network, I got the expert title, because it was far too hard for all of the anchors to say predictive analytics analyst. Say that 10 times fast at home in the comfort of your own environment. Anyways, I'm so glad to be here. It is such an honor. Obviously, this city knows how to win, not just once, but twice, and potentially even 3 times. I mean, exactly. Obviously, we're talking about American football, not soccer. All of the analytics around all of these other sports seems to be a little bit more, I'm going to use the word accepted, potentially. Baseball, absolutely. I was actually told that you're not allowed to give an analytics speech if you don't quote Moneyball. So I'm going to talk about when Billy Beane talked about, when he said, people who run ball clubs, they think in terms of buying players. Your goal shouldn't be to buy players. Your goal should be to buy wins. In order to buy wins, you need to buy runs. So obviously, that doesn't exactly work for NFL football, but it does work in terms of talking about context, right? So in the NFL landscape right now, just in terms of the game that's played on the field, you need to have more first downs and touchdowns than your opponent. You need to stop more first downs and touchdowns than your opponent in order to win. It can be a balance of one versus the other. Obviously, we have a new kickoff rule. That could impact the game. Actually, here specifically, Justin Reid has talked about how he wants to potentially impact the all 53, so 53 people on the roster. You could potentially look at some different ways to construct it. But at the heart of this, what you're saying is you need to look at things differently. In football, we have a salary cap and a salary floor. Everyone's working with the same band of money. You can't buy a baseball team in football. You can't buy LeBron James in basketball. Or does he even counting more because isn't he only staying to maybe play with the son? But that's a different conversation for a different day. But what you can do in football and what people are doing are 3 main things right now. So every club, all 32, they have 3 ways that they're using. I'm going to use analytics in this quote because I'm not even sure what that word means anymore. But ultimately, you're trying to optimize for 1, load management, like they call it in basketball, which is your performance of your players. Many teams track players. They will see how often their heart rate reaches a certain level, threshold, and they'll use that data to optimize performance such that in key times, you can help prevent injuries, soft tissue injuries, et cetera, and optimize for the athlete as a whole athlete. Another way we're using it is what I'm calling the off-season metrics. So let's combine both the NFL draft and free agency. So everything that goes into before the season even starts. How much should you pay for a player, and who should you target in the draft? A really good example is actually Xavier Worthy, who is now a Kansas City Chief. He ran the fastest 40 in NFL history. That is great, wonderful. There's some data that suggests maybe as long as he's over a threshold that would have been wonderful. But on this particular team, selecting for the opportunity to stretch the defense a bit more and use his speed, that's something that this team values probably more than other teams. I say probably because Andy Reid hasn't told me that, but you can see it based on all of the decisions that have been made. So speed is something that the Chiefs absolutely select for. And what you're really trying to do is to create a team who the average, so you're not really worried about these outliers. You're lucky you have Patrick. Now you have to build around him. How do you take something that could be average in the broader sense of the NFL and make it a bit above average in your specific set of parameters? And lastly, in-game analytics. You've probably seen the most information about this from the Ravens. They talk about, or maybe the Eagles, with the Philly special, although I would argue that Nick Foles probably called that play a little more than Doug Peterson, but it doesn't matter. But ultimately, what you're seeing is in-game analytics being okay, we hear it on TV. The analytics say to go for it on 4th down. Is that even true? I'm from Michigan, and I can tell you Dan Campbell, an analytical model that the Lions use, did not say that in the second or the end of the first half that they should have kicked the field goal. It said they should have gone for it on that 4th down, if you remember this play in the NFC Championship game. But the point is they're using models, they're creating structures, they're leveraging data in ways we've never done before. In fact, this is so nerdy, but I did it anyways. You know when you're watching a game and you hear one of the analysts say, the analytics say. Have you anyone remember hearing that this past season? You didn't hear it 5 years ago. No one would have said that. Well, There's, 272 games, regular season. How many times do you think it was said? Anyone? 3,600, that's like a lot, but I like that it's But ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is I actually I just took the TV data, so I don't know how, I didn't add in radio, but took the TV data, I scrubbed the closed captioning. It was actually said almost 700 times. It's like 682 times in this past season. That's not the playoffs. I didn't have time for that. I do also have a life. Also, that tells you something about analytics. You have to remember it is data over time. So the amount of time tells you how perfect you can get the data. So it's these things working together. It's not necessarily some nerd with a computer over in the corner telling you, you should go for it on this play. It is not ruining the sport because it is all about structure. Anything can ruin a sport. Lack of communication can ruin a game. Lack of understanding what was told can ruin a game. Lack of understanding if you should give Patrick Mahomes the ball back at the end if you're, a certain coach named Kyle Shanahan. I'm just saying, that can also ruin the outcome of games as well. So when you're looking at all of these things together, what modern analytics has taken to mean can be a little scary, especially with the macro climate of AI and how that means God knows what. To be honest with you, I'm not even sure what that means anymore. I know it means artificial intelligence, but what does it actually mean to an everyday person anymore? It means, I guess I could have asked ChatGPT to write this for me, and then I can't look at your faces and get the feedback. I already know the subject matter, right? So it's really about trying to do things. What I can say is my experience with NFL teams, so in addition to TV, I also get a chance to work with some NFL teams. And what they're really trying to do is use technology to deliver insights faster. So if a regular coach uses his cowboy clicker, that's the thing that you just rewatch the same thing again, over and over again. They use their cowboy clicker and can get through 4 games worth of prep. Now they can have a playlist created of just specific third down, red area, when the Chiefs are down by 14, this is what they're going to this is the play they're going to run, right? So they can do quality control, something we've used forever in football. Bill Belichick, Ernie Adams, they have done it forever. And then they can ultimately speed up the relevant information. So you're not really doing more, you're using your time in a smarter way where it's segmented to things that make more sense. Do things go wrong? Absolutely. Communication breaks down a lot. An opportunity can be missed by how people think that, or misinterpret what a coach wants, or misinterpret maybe a player isn't as healthy as they thought. There's no particular metric to say, this player's at 78%, this player's at 100%. That's not how life works. So you have to have the art, but the science gives you a little bit better of a structure in order to create the framework such that you can be a better artist. So I love analytics. And I will also say that Aaron Rodgers, who we can think what we want about him in general, but he modified another Moneyball quote, right? It's hard not to get romantic about baseball, football. I'm gonna further modify and say, it's hard not to get romantic about analytics because it is a place where a person like me who clearly has never played football, I can be not just a participant, but I can actually be helpful and useful. And I recently had one of my favorite coaches in the entire world, Todd Bowles. He told me that if I were a football player, I'd be a safety, which makes me very, very proud because if any of you know what a safety is supposed to do on a specific play that's not on the actual team, you're a liar. Anyways. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any more questions after this about how analytics is kind of playing out in the media landscape too, because we are in this weird time of gambling's coming and all these other consolidations. But I love our guests here, and most of them work on the field product. And by the way, we could have an 18-game season. My boss said that today. And very funny enough, that was my entree to the NFL world, was figuring out as a banker, an investment banker, how to create a 17-game season, and that was several years ago. So it all comes full circle here, and all it means is more football for you that actually matters. So thank you for listening to me, and we'll introduce our guests. Are you guys ready? Have I made you wait long enough for the actual people who are coming out here? Let's see if I can find it. All right. So you guys know him as a Pro Bowl center. Tim, where are you, Tim Grunhard? second-round pick by the Kansas City Chiefs in 1990, an anchor of the Chiefs' O-line during the 1990s, and during that time, he started 164 games, which ranks third in franchise history, and in 2021, Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame inductee, Coach. Can I just call you Coach?
Yeah, Coach is fine.
Grunhard. Awesome. My former coworker, Dr. Paul Sabin. He's going to be mad at me for saying that. He's a PhD and senior fellow at the Wharton Sports Analytics and Business Initiative and a lecturer in the Department of Statistics and Data Science at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. When you go to Penn, you can talk better than when you go to... When we worked together, he was the VP of Football Analytics, or you were a VP of Football Analytics at Sumer Sports, and he led football analytics efforts working with NFL teams. And before that, when we worked together, he was a senior sports data scientist at ESPN. All right, next up, defensive tackle. He's a really good defensive tackle too, right? Mike Pennel Jr., two-time Super Bowl champion with your Kansas City Chiefs. This man beats 49ers. He knows how to beat 49ers specifically, part of the KC Super Bowl team over the Niners in 2020, and then returned midseason in 2023 to be a dominant force on the interior of the defensive line during the team's recent playoff run. You were the highest graded interior defensive lineman in the Super Bowl. Did you know that?
I did. Thank you.
He's like, I saw the moment when he decided whether or not he was going to be humble. Oh, I didn't know that. I knew.
I'm on Instagram.
Awesome. And last but not least, Adam Petrus. He's the lead of North America Business Development and Sales for Sports and Entertainment at Zebra Technologies. He's been working with Next Gen Stats since 2015. Prior to joining the sales team, he co-managed Zebra's game day operations of the NFL's Next Gen Stats program and served as the project lead for the NFL's equipment tracking program, Virtual Locker. He has the actual RFIDs here tonight. You can see them if you want to see what goes both in the shoulder pads and in the actual NFL ball, too.
Yeah, exciting. Cynthia.
Okay, so we're going to start with an easy one. Tim?
Okay, I'm ready.
Do you like analytics?
Thank you for having me out here. This is great to be out here. I think I was here a couple of years ago talking about helmet technology and CTE. If you guys were here, thank you so much for coming back. One
of the best ways that analytics has actually played into the NFL is in the health and safety initiatives. As a former player, what do you think about this explosion of all of these different analytics pieces that we now see and you hear, you watch, listen, I did my whole master's thesis to prove an offensive line coach wrong who said there was nothing I could ever do that was interesting, Russ Grimm, that was of interest to him. How do you feel about analytics these days?
I think that there certainly is a place for analytics. I think you can have paralysis by analysis. Which means that, really in the NFL, the dirty little secret in the NFL is you're trying to get your opponent to hesitate. Think about it. That's what you're trying to do. Everybody is good. Everybody has a lot of talent. Everybody has a lot of skill. So what you're trying to do is get the other player across from you or the other team across from you to hesitate. When you hesitate in the NFL, when you hesitate in any sport, you fail. Look at a baseball player. If he thinks it's a fastball and all of a sudden that curveball comes and he hesitates and it's a strike, he doesn't even swing. Same thing happens in football. So when you watch Andy Reid with some of the stuff that he does with motions and with formations and trying to get the safety's eyes busy and trying to get the linebackers to look around and trying to get the defensive linemen to try to peek, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to hesitate. So when I was thinking about these analytics, in 1990 when I started playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, there was no word analytics in football. But what there was film study. What there was using your eyes. That is still so important, and I'm sure Mike will talk about this too. You can have all this information, all this cloud of information, But the reality of the situation is that you've got to have that information at the tip of your fingers in order to use that to be successful. And that's what I think analytics has done now for the current player. You can have all this information, all these stats, all these different film breakdowns. The guys have iPads now that they carry around, and they can watch the film on the plane. They can watch the game in real time, basically, when we had chalkboards and we had whiteboards where they draw things up and you would have to look at it. But the most important thing is to believe your eyes. I'll give you 3 examples of the analytics from back in the old days. Number 1, as an offensive lineman, especially as a center, you're the traffic cop of the offensive line. You're really the traffic cop of the offense. So you're the one who communicates. I was so glad you used that word, communicate. Communicating is just so important in the game of football. The quarterback will give you the play, but as we walk up to the line of scrimmage, the center will look and he'll say, okay, here's the defense we're going against, whether it's a 34 defense, which means 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers, whether it's a 42 defense, which is 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers, or some sort of kind of combination of all those things. So what you look for in your eyes is, number 1, you want to look at the defensive lineman's feet. Okay? So Mike, stand up with me real quick.
Here we go.
All right, here, Mike and I are going to go against each other here. All right? If Mike's feet are square, boy, he's big, isn't he? If Mike's feet are square, where can he go? He can really only go this way or that way. It's hard to penetrate because he'll have to hesitate a little bit to drop a foot to get up the field. So the first thing that I would look at, how is Mike's feet lined up? If his feet were square, I knew he was going to run either a TT, which meant 2 tackles twisting, a TE, or a tornado where you have two linemen and a defensive end coming around. That was the first thing. Number 2 is Mike is lined up with his feet there. Now I know Mike is probably going to go straight ahead, or he's got the ability here to take a good step this way. It's very hard to go that way with his foot straight ahead, right? So it's all little things like that. So the feet of a defensive lineman. And then the next thing I'd look for, and this is all, guys, within a matter of a second or 2. And I'm not saying that I was smart, but I'm saying what I did was I watched film and I understood what I was trying to get done. So now Mike's lined up in a 1 technique and I have a Mike linebacker. Stand up and be my little Mike linebacker.
Here we go.
Look at that. This is the best linebacker, Mike linebacker ever. If she's in a squared position right here, I knew she probably wasn't going to blitz. Because just watching film, she was in a position where she had to take either the A gap or the B gap, was responsible for certain areas of the defensive line. But if she shifted over, okay, my eyes, boom, that light bulb went off. I knew that she was going to do something. All right? So that's analytics to back in the old days. And then number 3, what you do is you look at the linebacker and the safety and the combination of those 2. Thanks, Mike. No problem. And you would look at those guys and you say, okay, why is that safety moving over, or why is that safety moving over that linebacker outside? Well, because he's going to take over that position when that linebacker comes blitzing off the edge, so we would change our protections. So little things like that was analytics for us. Guys, there's all kinds of numbers, there's all kinds of stats, there's all kinds of different things that they have nowadays, but the reality of the situation is you want to get a team to hesitate, you want to get people to have busy eyes, but you have to trust your eyes. You have to trust your instincts. You have to trust what you've done all week in practice, in film study, in work with your playbook and your game plan. That's what's so important in football. And the analytics, those are tools that you take out of your toolbox, right? We all have our toolbox. When you're playing the game, you have a toolbox and you take tools out of that toolbox to give you an opportunity to win, give you an opportunity to have success. And that, to me, is what analytics does now for the current player. And it is a great asset. But the reality of the situation is, do not be paralyzed by analyzing. Because when you get paralyzed by analyzing, you what? Got it.
Masterclass.
That's a fact.
I love
Am I done now?
the dramatic sip at the end.
Can I go home now?
My goodness, that was
That's
amazing.
all I know.
That was it. Wait, so I was going to ask Mike the same thing, but I actually want to. So one of the things that Paul has been responsible for at ESPN and then at Sumer Sports was kind of coming up with what I'm going to call those hyper speed quality control reports that you talked about. So you talked about looking at his feet. Well, then we talked, no one plays a regular front anymore. They're all these hybrid fronts. When's the last time you saw 43? That's not high school or college, right?
Right.
That you could easily identify. Well, one of the things he has done, including the FPI, so if you see all the football predictive analyses and indices, that's him. If you don't like them, you can email him. I'll give you his email after. But in general,
I'll give you my ESPN email. It doesn't work.
Right. But how would you, when you're talking to teams, how would you kind of supercharge that, the stuff he's talking about? Explain how teams are using data in positive ways. It's not trying to make you hesitate. It's trying to help you kind of hardwire those tendencies a little bit faster.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. When I was younger, I used to think as a naive, I played high school football. I was a backup quarterback. 1 for 3 in one game for 78 yards and a touchdown. That's my football highlight. All right, yeah. I threw the ball 4 yards. My receiver on a slant took it 74.
Perfect.
There we go.
But I will say, we're playing who's, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. My high school coach was also Caleb Williams' high school coach.
Oh.
So we're pretty much the same. Just kidding. No, but I used to think that, data tells you everything. I was young, naive. And the more I've been in this profession, worked with players and coaches and GMs and other things, I have an old colleague that used to work at ESPN, his name's Dean Oliver. He kind of was a revolutionary in basketball analytics. But he used to say that, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but that when you watch film or when you watch things with your eyes, as we just heard, you see more, right? You can see more with your eyes at a time. But the data sees all the plays. So in a given play, you can see more with your eyes than the data can, but the data can see every play. And so there's always this trade-off. Now, we can't measure everything, right? And so we don't have any technology really now, not even with our tracking chips, to really know if a defensive lineman's leaning a certain way or if his feet are a certain way, because we don't have that precision in the data right now. So when an offensive lineman says that, I don't trust him because I'm not the expert. I'm not the expert there. But then we have to come up with other things that I think in general, when it comes to players, they probably underestimate how much we can know with data. And I think people like me or the analysts that work for teams or the third party probably overestimate how much we can know with data as well. And so it's always important to sort of be humble in what we acknowledge. And so when we build things for teams and other things like that, we want to start with common ground and start with, okay, what is important to you? When you are scouting an opponent, what do you look for? Or if you're a GM, when you're trying to figure out who to sign or who to draft, what are you looking for? Okay, now what is the scout looking for? Can we quantify a player's speed? Oh, we actually can do that now. We used to not be able to, but now we can. Okay, so why are we going to have the scouts quantify their top end speed? Maybe we want to quantify how good they are at juking someone. Okay, we can kind of do that with data, but maybe not as well. And so it's always kind of starting in common ground and saying, what do you want? What do you need? I'm going to answer that question, and then let me see if I can answer a question that you don't think you have, because often we get stuck and we don't think outside the box. Players have been playing football their whole lives. They're experts. Sometimes it does help to have an outside person kind of with fresh eyes say, well, okay, I understand what you're saying, and let me help you with that. But have you considered this? And sometimes they're like, yeah, and that's stupid. And other times they're like, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So you talked about how we are now able to quantify things like speed, top end speed, for example. Can you just take us through a little bit about how Zebra, so the actual technology, what it does, what it's given us, just because maybe not everybody knows?
Absolutely, and great question, Cynthia. And first of all, I got to say, man, what a beautiful library. This is impressive. Yeah. I'm looking forward to coming back and getting my hands on some of these books at one point. But so let's start with Zebra Technologies. Zebra is a global technology company that delivers real-time results. What we do is we build solutions that enable businesses to improve their performance by connecting assets, data, and people. And so we're a leader at the edge of the enterprise. And how does that translate to NFL? Well, first it starts with, think about when you go to your grocery store and you scan your product across that barcode scanner. That's a Zebra scanner. When you go to your favorite boutique and they have a handheld scanner and they hit your tag, that's a Zebra handheld scanner. Now, we get a little more sophisticated as we get into radio frequency identification, RFID. And there are now retailers today that are asking all of your merchandise to come pre-tagged. And so what's happening, and if you went to the Super Bowl this year, maybe watch one of your favorite teams, and you went to the NFL experience in that store, all the merchandise had RFID tags. And what happened is you put those in a bag, you comb through the line, you drop it into a box, there's an RFID reader, an antenna sequence in there. It automatically tells you that you bought 3 Mahomes jerseys, a hat, and a football. You see the price. You pull
I bought a Pennel jersey. Welcome.
Of course, I meant Pennel jersey.
Perfect.
When I was there, they were sold out. So
Got it. I got there first.
You guys are
Yeah.
I got there first.
So
The Grunhard jerseys had a tag on them.
or a lot of dust, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of dust, had a tag.
So what happens is that the transactions, on average, were 37 seconds. Now you think about anywhere else you go and you have that kind of merchandise, but that is the world we're living in, is that we want automation. We want it to happen and happen quickly. And that's the way we're going, to almost frictionless interactions. So now, take what Zebra has been doing. So Zebra's a 50-year company. We're called Zebra because we started with the barcode. And now we've bought robotics companies. We're into machine vision, computer vision, and these are some of the solutions that you're now starting to see in the world of sports and technology. However, the NFL, we're very proud to be an NFL partner as the official partner for player tracking and ball tracking. We're going into our 11th season. And what we've been able to do is to take all the lessons learned of what we were doing in manufacturing, in healthcare, where we're tracking assets autonomously, and how many widgets are in the back. Looking at the algorithm of the nurses on the floors going to check on patients. That's real-time data that's coming in. And what we've been able to do partnering with the NFL is exactly that. Every NFL player, every NFL stadium globally, to include the Brazil location, will have Zebra hardware, UWB ultra-wideband radio frequency identification system that is hooked up, ready to go, and it delivers that time in real time. So you think about when you see the broadcast and it tells you that Travis Kelce's fastest rate of speed on the last play was 19.2 miles per hour. That's Zebra collecting that raw data, and then we are integrated with the broadcast, and then SMT, Sports Motion Television, puts the neat graphics on there, and then our broadcasters are able to tell these really neat stories about the performance of the players that are out there. And so that is the way that we're going, and then there's so many neat stories that come out of it, but we're very proud of what we've been able to do on the football field and outside the football field.
So just to make it even clearer, I talk about next-gen stats a lot. The next-gen stats are enabled by the RFID, and all of you have jobs where you need to make money. Not that the NFL needs to make any more money, but then we sell it to Amazon, and I say, this is your next-gen stats, brought to you by AWS. And then we get to then sell it on TV. So just so you know, a little behind the curtain on that one.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, because now you're able to not just tell me speed. Speed was kind of where we first started. But I can tell you can tell me how many times this man has stopped a run. You can tell me how many times to the left or to his right or whichever direction, however you lined up. You can tell me when he's a 3. You can tell me when he's a 1. Like, you can tell me all of the different ways in which he lined up.
And that's the neat thing about next-gen stats, the next generation of statistics. Mm-hmm. Like you said before, you're looking at a stat sheet, you were looking at certain things. Now, talking with the team at the NFL, on one NFL play, there are 264 data points that are being pulled. And then from that subset, you're getting down to, well, what actually is of value? What is valuable to the fan? What's valuable to the coaches? And then what's ultimately valuable to the players? And so, as you know, in 2018, the NFL Rules Committee agreed that every NFL team could get every other NFL team's next-gen stats data. They already had the video, but now we're in this age of technology, and so common playing field for everybody. And so if you know what to look for, that's where a competitive advantage can come in. And Tim's absolutely right. It's a tool in the tool set. And we used to tell a somewhat funny joke that there's 2 types of coaches and GMs in the NFL. There are those that believe in data and data analytics, and then there's former coaches and GMs. Because in the modern world, you can't not look at it. It is a part of the schema, and they take that data, and then we have a solution that many of the teams use for practice. And so they're looking at the load management. They're looking at the return to play. If someone was injured and then you had that pre-injury data, you can put them on a plan that, hey, we want to see you at 75% for this week of practice. We're going to limit the reps. We're going to limit the throws. And so that's the exciting part about everything Next Gen Stats is bringing.
Yeah, so as a player, and especially a player who you played in different systems too. I know Green Bay runs a little different than here, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely different.
Yeah. How do you think this is all how does it like impacting you on a, not necessarily off season, we know you were working out nonstop off season, but in season, how does it kind of impact you, or do you not even notice it?
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for being here. I love talking football, love meeting with legends. I'm glad everybody's here. Appreciate everybody for coming. Start off with that. But for me, I'm glad you guys have me here. I'm very much about the analytics, off season and in season. So with the Next Gen Stats, where they're talking about formations or where they're going to run certain plays for this down and distance, that was a lot of what it had to do with the Super Bowl planning and everything like that. And even as you spoke, they can't have all the right answers, and we know that as well, and teams know that as well, and they have certain plays that have certain outliers that you just have to ignore, but you can see it in the numbers. The numbers are undeniable. Yeah. But I also have a combination of, the old school, because there are things in football that literally you cannot do if you don't put your body in this position. You cannot go this way, you cannot open up, and even as he said, he's calling out the protection, that the defensive lineman for me, playing against, in the Super Bowl, I hear you talking a certain protection. I played long enough to know that now it's a pass. Right. Now I can communicate that to Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, and can get a game going. And now I can know if you're not communicating, it's a run. If this offensive guard or this left tackle is lined up parallel besides this side of the offensive line, which is a little bit further back than that left tackle, which maybe you guys don't see, but the analytics we've seen and we watch film because of their tendencies, I know they're running here. So, a lot of players, they'll say they don't pay attention to it, but in Andy Reid's program, you pay attention to it a lot. So we break it down to, they give us all the information, and they handle us as men and choose what we decide to do with it. Mm-hmm. So, beginning of the week, no matter what game it is, I'll go to the coaches and I want their analytics, the Next Gen Stats, Pro Football Focus, what percentages of what tendencies and what formations of what they do what, and that literally eliminates about 80% of what they could do on this specific play. I mean, as a D lineman, my job is easy. I gotta go straight, right, or left. That's it. Those are the only things I can do.
It's not easy when it's Christian McCaffrey and the Super Bowl.
Yes, that is true.
Give yourself a little credit here.
I mean, that is true, but the numbers prepared us for that moment. Yep. For to sit here and say that everyone in that locker room, even on the coaching staff, that wasn't just another game for us. I mean, that was just another game. And it was so good to see the mic'd up version, because you'll see how some franchises literally don't prepare for that moment. We have a coach, Coach Fraze, shout out to Coach Fraze. He literally gave us the whole rundown on overtime right before we went out the night before the meeting in the game. Everything that could happen, every scenario, if we do this is what we want to do. Even we go down to if we're going to call heads or tails or not. We can't see cheats, it's all planned, yeah. There's nothing by luck, it is all strategic. So.
Right.
For a player like me, being undrafted, being in a bunch of different places, the analytics and stats saved and elongated my career. I know that physically, training with anything, I'm capable of doing what I want on the football field, but if I know where you're going and that gives me the step up and that makes offensive line.
So you don't hesitate?
I mean, the linemen hesitate when you know when you do. If you don't hesitate, you win. And as he knows, that's 80% of it. I mean, right. if you're sure in what you're doing, then that's the players that make plays, and the people that are unsure are the players that give Pat Mahomes a chance to score. So you gotta pay attention to all that. I know that's painful for somebody, but that's a fact. But it was great to
painful for Niners fans. No one in this room. It is not painful for a single one of the people in this room.
I've met a Niners fan in Kansas City. So, they might have slipped in here a little bit. Rare, but. For me, that's why I'm glad to come here. I'm glad to sit with this panel of people and, talk with you guys, because that is an unsung and unseen part of my game that a lot of people don't know about unless you are in the game or you're a GM or a coach, how much we take that into account.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really love about seeing analytics become more and more at least talked about, obviously I work in TV, so that's the thing I see the most of, is it's really trying to enable how to use a player, not how to screw over a player. Yeah. And especially in a year when the cap jumped as significantly as it did this year, which was a little bit more than I think all of us thought, then it gave some opportunities to teams who, especially teams who, were able, either you already have a quarterback and you can figure everything else out, or you have a rookie quarterback and you can pay for everything else. It gave people an opportunity to choose their strategy a little bit differently. It's not 100% of people can get paid always, but that's just the way it goes. But the analytics are how to for me, not how to not.
Exactly.
It's not great English.
And I agree with that 100%. A lot of people from the outside perspective of the game don't believe that a lot of that comes into play. I mean, I've been a player that I've been on 6 different teams, so we've negotiated 6 different contracts, and Pro Football Focus has come up. Next Stats has come up. How long has this player played? Can this player, what percentage are you successful in making plays on single blocks? Can you make plays on double blocks? These are things that they come prepared for us. So there's no hide-in or anything like that. So, I mean, a lot of people, when they say that they're not paying attention or anything like that, everybody's paying attention to everything.
They're definitely paying attention. There's a certain GM in a certain town near south of New York where people are a little angrier that texts me every time I pick against his team. But so they certainly pay attention to what's going on. And speaking of kind of paying attention to all of this, as we move forward, there's a change in the rules. Mm-hmm. I want to know from a former player and players. Okay, kickoff rule. It's kind of a cool moment where analytics could be into play. Justin Reed says he wants to kick off. Mm-hmm. You only get 53 players. Mm-hmm. Now you could have another linebacker. Or, last year, that's just when I think of you were a little injured in that position. So what are we doing here? Don't give away any trade secrets because this is being broadcast and I don't want anyone from the Bills to be watching.
I actually think I just saw him practicing kicking out back.
Yeah. Might have. Tobes is our great special teams coach. He's a Hall of Fame special teams coach, so I'm not going to make Tobes upset with saying anything, scheme-wise.
Right.
With the game, it's always advancing, it's always changing.
Yep.
I think, me personally, it'll be very exciting for the game. Be more action, won't be such a dead play. And like I said, I'm going to draft guys, so anything that raises more opportunities for guys to come in the game and make an impact, make them more valuable to a roster, I'm okay with that. Now, when you change the QB hitting rules, I'm totally against that. But kickoff rules, I'm good to go. There's not much I can say.
Can you even list all the rules about where are you allowed to hit the quarterback? Is that okay? Can you
hold on, we got to be right here. No.
There's a little spot about right that big that you can hit on.
The strike zone, that's where you can hit them.
We've had whole dissertations on that. You guys wouldn't believe. You can't even put your full weight on them. You have to land and go off sideways. Yes, you have to roll. If you don't,
but you can't drop.
It's crazy.
So do they still have the meetings, like the very first meeting of training camp, Roger Goodell or somebody will come in and they'll explain the new rule? And you guys have watched the State of the Union, right?
Yeah.
When the president's a Republican and all the Republicans stand up and cheer and the Democrats sit there like this. And if it's the other way around, that's the way it is with the defense and the offense.
Absolutely.
They'll say, the new rule is that you can't hit the quarterback below the knees. The offensive guys will all stand up and cheer, and the defensive guys will be sitting there like that.
When are the defensive guys ever cheering?
Very few times.
Very few.
But they had a moment with that DPI, potentially, the not call of DPI being able to be. Yeah. That was a moment.
Thank you. Yeah, there's one.
Then they walked it back.
But as far as the new kickoff rule, I don't know too much about it. I had a chance to speak with Dave Tobe a little bit about it. The first thing he said is he tried offensive and defensive linemen as the return team. Didn't work. Yeah. The guys were running around and they said that they were being dodged and they were missing. And like that's in the scrap heap. We're not using big guys. So you're going to see linebackers, you're going to see wide receivers, you're going to see safeties and corners, and I guess, Mike, I could say, because you're going to see the athletes out there.
Yeah. You'll see the skinny guys.
Number two is one of the things that they can't have the trap blocking. One of the things they were talking about is doing some stuff from one side to the other.
Tell them what a trap block is.
Trapping, because it's blind side block. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I don't think we're given, you know what, nobody will say anything here, right? If I give you some inside information, nobody's going to say
It's not
anything.
being stranger.
You're not going to tell anybody, right? But I think Dave was talking a little bit about, especially with the speed of Xavier Worthy, is some counteraction. All right, what is a counteraction? It's when the running back will set the blocking one way and then go the other way and cut the other way. So when you're running a counter in an offensive play, what you're doing, you're trying to cut the defense maybe at the 3 technique or the 1 technique. So you're double teaming down on that guy, and then you're pulling 2 guys to kick out, and the back will counter so that the linebackers move. Once again, hesitation, right? And then he comes back around. So what they're thinking about is they're trying to figure out a way where without doing the blindside block, without doing a trap block, they can run a counter type of movements in the kickoff, because just like Mike said, and he's exactly right, that was a dead play. It was boring. And the last thing the NFL wants is a boring play. They want action.
No, we're on Christmas now. We're taking over Christmas Day.
Absolutely.
We're taking over.
These
never not NFL football.
These guys
anywhere.
got to play on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this year.
But we get to watch on
you can
Monday,
have Tuesday
Wednesday.
off. That's it.
Tuesdays are the day.
But so they're going to do a little bit of that. But there'll be some different schemes and some different things.
Yep.
I think one of the reasons why the Chiefs went out, and I really loved what you said about the speed of the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers, because the Kansas City Chiefs offense runs, the fuel for that offense is space.
Absolutely.
If you don't have space, you don't have an offense. You don't have the fuel to run that offense. In the last 3 or 4 years, and Mike could tell you from just practice, they didn't have anybody that was threatening down the field, so the safeties came up and everybody was up and there was no space. Now you got Hollywood Brown and you got Xavier Worthy spreading that field out. Travis Kelce's going to be like a kid at Christmas catching the ball. There's going to be nobody in there. So space is the key, but the excitement of the kickoff is back, and I think it's going to be cool to see how it works out.
Can I just add to that in the sense
course.
that one of the neat metrics that I love about what Kansas City has done over the years, and if you look at, especially in the playoffs, red zone, the use of motion. They have one of the highest percentage of success rate within the red zone running motion. We're talking like 70%. And it's impressive. So again, Andy Reid in how he formulates that offense in the movement and the distractions, the hesitation, but then also in the data. They know that it continues to work. And you would think that a good defense would be able to find a way to defeat it.
And who's that 12th defender? The end line, right? So there's 12 defenders out there.
Yeah.
You get in the red zone, right?
Yep.
There's 12 defenders because you can't go deep.
Anti-speed.
Everybody's kind of stacked up in there. So that motion, you're exactly right. That motion, and as a defensive guy, when you see all those guys running around, you're like, uh-oh, okay, what's coming now? And that, once again, gets back to the premise of what? Hesitation. I mean, I'm telling you guys, analytics is doing a great job of helping guys to not hesitate and giving guys the opportunity to study and know what's going to happen before it does. It's not always 100%, but it gives them an opportunity not to hesitate. And if you don't hesitate, that's when you win. And that's what the Chiefs do.
So when you have do you have someone that plays nose tackle on a panel, you need to ask this question, because this past year, for a long time, it was outside zone run scheme. Everyone's a Kyle Shanahan disciple. We run outside zone, right? But now, last year...
That's exactly how they said it.
It is. I think it's highly accurate. But this year you saw a lot of ISO, duo, boom, right up the middle, right where the big guy is. Not a lot of teams actually have like a nose tackle anymore. People don't really play with that. So when you're seeing these trends and these pendulums swing back and forth like this, I'm going to ask you this, Mr. Dr. Professor. That's my new name for Paul, because we've worked together for so long. Dr. Professor, so when we see these pendulums, do we think we're going to see more of that, like just running up the A-gap, meaning like running right in the middle again this season? Or do you think now it's like, oh, that little trick play worked for a little while and not anymore?
I'm not going to postulate on what coaches are going to do, but I do think, to answer your question, one of the awesome things about the NFL and having a closed 32-team league is that it's always changing. Mm-hmm. And so if you just rest, like, hey, 10 years ago, you're like, hey, we should spread the field out. We should pass the ball more. And like that's worked. You know what? Like, it's worked every year. Passing has been more and more efficient until last season.
That's right.
It's the first year it ever went down.
And now Justin Jefferson is making all the money. Just saying.
But, like, I joke that, like, there's going to be some really innovative coach one day that's going to be like, you know what, we should do this thing called a triple option. And maybe in 10 to 15 years, because the players that they recruit and the linebackers now, Fred Warner has all this speed and he's great in pass coverage. That's not what the linebackers used to look like 20 years ago, right? And so that's the type of players that there are now. And how to beat that is maybe it's not to throw the ball down the field the whole time. Maybe we need to run the ball more and we need to isolate the defensive tackle. And so things are always going to change, and data is always going to play a role in that. And if you just think, oh, this is what works because the data says so, and you haven't updated that analysis recently, like you are going to get beat, right? And
100%.
Things are always changing.
Well, look no further than the Chiefs, right? This past year, your defense was anchoring the regular season that got you to the postseason. I mean, on Christmas, people were not very happy last year. And then things really changed come February. So it's an interesting dynamic of even within the same team, you have such a hugely different way of getting there from 2020. I mean, same opponent in the Super Bowl even, right? Like,
Exactly.
Completely different way to get there. And by the way, AFC in terms of playoffs is significantly harder than the NFC, just if you're looking at quarterbacks alone. Obviously, injuries, we don't know what's going to happen. But, all of these things are coming into play kind of all at the same time, so you have to keep things moving in that same direction, and therefore you have to have a coach like Andy Reid who's willing to do that, sometimes spread out, sometimes compress the offensive line, et cetera, keep moving things forward, use the data to piece that together in order to make that happen. So are you going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Absolutely. Definitely go for the three-peats. But
Repeat.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we're going for. I don't see anybody that's stopping us, so yes. We'll be playing in February. But that is where actually it was an interesting point that you were making, that the analytics has changed the game, in my opinion. I'm glad to speak on this because, as you said, more outside runs and inside runs. But I feel like that's because from the numbers, everybody's trying to fly and throw. Now you see, going in the top draft, not of the last 2 years, but you didn't really see a D tackle going in the first 2 rounds that was over 300 pounds, was over 305 or anything like that. You got 290, 280 pass rushers because you play the Chiefs, you're going to be pass rushing most of the time. But what stands as true as time, I kind of think football's kind of like fashion. It's always going to come back around.
Back.
Like what now they're wearing Junko jeans when I was in, now that's hot now. Ed Hardy's coming back, guys.
Just like me in middle school.
Yeah, you
now.
get what I'm saying? Ed Hardy's hot now. But championship football and playoff football and, where weather comes into play, teams have to run the ball. And I think that is something that is, underlying that Chiefs fans know about, that, you have to have a well-balanced team in the playoffs when conditions come into play. So when you see a team like Miami coming up to Kansas City in -20,
Talking about that, yeah.
you're not going to average 8 yards a carry. No. Yeah, you can't throw rocket screens out there.
I'm not 100% on this, but I know a significant portion of their team actually wears wetsuits under their uniforms, their pads. So there has to be an impact when that like you can't run if I'm in a wetsuit, I can't run. I just can't.
So literally,
it's a fact.
We have the analytics on that. Phrase came up and talked to us about, like, don't put too many layers on at halftime, take everything off, switch this shirt, it's rather you guys put jackets on. And we've seen all those guys going out there like that, and we were prepared for that moment. That's why we were so glad that the game didn't get moved. But, standing through the test of time in the game, I do see more in the playoffs now that they'll have to run more outside. You'll see a lot of teams trying to attack the edges, but, being an interior tackle, if you get into an 8 to 10 play drive and the offense is rolling and you get a double team 4 or 3 times in a row, there's physically nothing you can do. So I don't ever see, teams in the playoffs eliminating the interior run game. I see some little sprinkles maybe, or even a couple option plays. Baltimore tried that for a couple of years. They kind of got that system, but I always see that as a, analytics will say that's a highly successful play and a highly successful formations for a lot of teams, attacking the inside and getting that sure 2 to 3 yards instead of taking that chance on 7 for a play where, there's different variables that come up. It could be an interception, it could be this, it could be that, a fumble, you could have a player injured on this play. So it's great to see. It's great to see.
So before we take some questions, I have to ask you the one analytics question other than should running backs get paid, which is not really a question anymore. We already saw what happens. But the ultimate question here is momentum real? So I'm going to open it up. You're going to have to start this one because I feel like we're going to need another dramatic sip there, and your water's almost done. So you need to go first, just so you have enough water left in case that dramatic sip happens again.
Now, yeah, I'm a big proponent in momentum. I really think momentum is key. Being, having the opportunity to play 11 years in the NFL and then going to coaching, I was telling somebody today that I started playing football when I was 10 years old, and this will be the first fall that I didn't play or coach, 47 years.
Wow.
So
you look great for your age.
Momentum.
Especially for how many hits you've taken, you look amazing for your age.
I hope I look like that.
I'm a math person. I just did the math. Good for you.
Momentum is just so important, and the key is for momentum is being able to harness that momentum and use it the right way. I'll never forget, I'll give you guys just a real quick Lou Holtz story. So we were playing against the University of Miami, and it was the Catholics versus convicts game. Not a big
Michael
fan,
Irvin in that game?
Not a big fan of that. I was in that game. Not a big fan of the name of the game, but what happened is the Miami team ran through the stretching line in Notre Dame in the tunnel, and then there was this big fight in the tunnel and all this kind of stuff. And there was bad blood anyways, and a couple of years earlier, Miami beat them by like 58 points or something and ran the score up. But so to make a long story short, so we're in the locker room, and guys are just foaming at the mouth. They're ready to go. They're fired up. I mean, I've never seen a locker room with so much excitement, so much enthusiasm, just so bubbling with energy. And Lou Holtz came in and he said, "Let me tell you guys one thing. If I see one of you guys cheap shot somebody, if I see one of you guys playing the wrong way, if I see one of you guys doing it the way that Our Lady on the Dome doesn't approve of, your ass is off the team. I will kick you off the team right now." And at that point, the whole locker room this momentum went, woof. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, how is he going to get this team back going again? I mean, he went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. So he's going through all what we called analytics at the time, different things we wanted to, don't turn the ball over, penalties, miss assignments, all those kind of things. And he gets through, and at the very end, he stands up and said, "I just got one favor from you guys, just one favor. After we beat Miami, leave Jimmy Johnson's ass for me." And we all looked at each other. "He'd kick your ass, coach." But he got us all back going, and they all ran off the field. So momentum is so important, but it's got to be the right momentum.
Yeah.
You've seen teams that go out there and they're just so fired up and they're so emotional and everything else, and they have misassignments, they have mental errors, they're turning the ball over, they're doing. That's the one thing that Andy Reid does such a great job with these guys, and just about every Super Bowl, is they come out and they're even keel. And guess what? How many times you guys are going to be down 10 in the second half and make us all sweat it out, and then you go and win the game?
It's good for ratings.
Yeah, it's great for ratings.
Great storytelling.
But the key is they keep their momentum. Right? You guys keep a momentum. He's a great coach at keeping momentum. So I'm a big fan of momentum. I can't explain momentum. Anybody who says they can explain what that theory or the whole feel of momentum is, I think they're selling you a bill of goods. But momentum is just so important.
I was going to say, I can tell that was not the first time you've done your Lou Holtz impression. I can tell you guys probably made fun of him quite a bit behind his back. Listening to him on all those years he was on ESPN, that sounded pretty good. Now, I'm a statistician by training, and statisticians are always really good at caveating everything. And so I'm going to give a very caveated answer, which is not going to answer actually the question. And my caveat is, I think momentum is a very loosely defined thing, and I think a lot of the ways it's defined, I don't believe the data supports, but I think there are definitely things that are momentum that people might define, but maybe are explained by, hey, I'm healthier now, so is that momentum? And I'm healthier. Or the other team's gassed, is that momentum? I mean, if that's how you define momentum, then sure. But I might just say, well, the other team's tired, and so that's why you're performing better. Or, hey, you're used to playing in Miami, and now it's minus 30 5 degrees outside. Is that momentum? No, I just think that you don't know how to put on a jacket, you know? And so that's my caveat. I think, you know, it's been a big debate in the data world, like momentum in sports, and I think you could caveat it a lot of different ways. I used to always, my friends and I used to say, well, if momentum is as real as you think it is, you know, it magically disappears, and you know, if it's there and then it's not, then is that really momentum? So it just depends kind of what you're talking about. I do think teams play better in stretches. Now, whether or not that is explained by randomness or not, I think once you condition on maybe a few things like health and other factors, it's harder to explain. But I definitely do think that, you know, teams have streaks where they perform better and they have streaks where they perform worse. And there's probably some explanation, you know, behind those streaks. But at the same time, there's a lot of streaks that we as humans perceive to be streaks that are just random. And I think there's a little bit of both.
I loved his answer, to be honest. So I have to give you the player answer because, you know, as coaches, they're meant to motivate us and rationalize everything. So I would explain momentum to, well, how it is explained to me and how I believe it and being in the Kansas City Chiefs organization is turnovers. We believe that plays a big factor in momentum. Playing what times during the season and not turning over the ball. The numbers they've given us, I mean, to where if you win the turnover differential to who doesn't, I think it's like, you know, 75%, close to 80% win rate. So that's kind of what we lay our hat on when we talk about momentum. But I actually agree with you. That's not really something it's subjective, in my opinion.
No, certainly subjective, but I can tell you, I have been in the press box at Arrowhead when the Chiefs are down and how loud that stadium gets. I have been on the sidelines at the Super Bowl for 2 Kansas City Chief wins. I think there's also, you know, some teams, you look just over the general sports, right? If I say Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, in college, Tim Tebow, these guys find a way to win.
Period.
But
Forgot about Tim Tebow for a while.
that's it. But you look at the heart and soul. When they show Patrick Mahomes on the sideline and he's firing guys up. Now, I can't measure that, right? Zebra, we can't measure that, but we measure what happens on the field. And, you know, how is it that Travis Kelce always gets open, you know, in the fourth quarter to score? These guys find a way to win. I do think that momentum is something that's out there. It'd be great if you could measure it. The data doesn't lie. You can't measure the heart. But certainly, the Chiefs are a squad that find a way to win.
Sure.
So you either get into analytics by 2 ways. You're either like Dr. Professor over here, who's a statistician, or you're an investment banker, which means you got yelled at a lot more. So I'm going to say that I'm going to define, I think that psychology is real, and I think that what you're talking about are psychological effects, and that is the stuff that goes into your mindset and the things we can't measure. But I don't know if the last play dictates the next play from anything other than a psychological point of view. My belief in myself has a lot more to do with it than what, like, for example, Matthew Stafford, actually, I'm from Michigan, he used to stand behind a horrible O-line and get sacked every play. The next play after, that man had the highest passer rating and he had the highest completion percentage of any quarterback over an 8-year span. The play after being pressured. They didn't win, but to me that said something about his mindset. It didn't say anything about momentum. So while I don't know how to define momentum, I do believe in psychology. I'm not sure about all the rest of it. And that's how an investment banker would say. So I'm buying non-momentum, and I'm going to buy.
I will say this, that we used to call it frenzying. You ever heard that before?
Of course.
Defensive linemen, they frenzy. All right, you can get a defensive lineman and you can shut them down, and all of a sudden they get a sack or 2, and they're completely different players. Completely different players. And I don't know if that's momentum, I don't know if that's stats, I don't know if that, whatever that is, I didn't like it. So when a guy like Mike, if you know you're blocking him the whole game, and then all of a sudden he gets a sack, and then the next play he's fired up, he gets another sack or a pressure. We got to stop the frenzying. You got to stop the frenzying. And that momentum that we used to battle against all the time, offensive, defensive line play together. Yeah. When you're running the ball and you're averaging 4 or 5 yards a run, how hard is that to stop?
I mean, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's
psychologically. Yeah.
So, you know, I get it. There's numbers and there's all these different things.
I like how he always uses air quotes
Yeah, these
the entire
numbers.
time. Analytics, numbers.
Hey, you guys, I mean, I'm closer to Newt Rockney than I am to anybody else. So. But I do appreciate all that. I wasn't exposed to it, and I wish I was. I mean, I love it. I think the next gen stuff and all that's. I mean, I love seeing all that stuff, but I don't understand it.
I'm going to make you a convert. You need to watch more NFL Network.
Here we go. I watched that too, and it's like, oh, okay. All right, but. Okay. All right. I guess she knows what she's talking about. But the reality is that, there's two different generations, but the great thing is this game. This game is a great game. And, our job, everybody up here, is to have you guys understand the game better so you enjoy the game better and you watch it.
Absolutely.
That's what's important.
Facts.
So you'll watch something this game and you'll say, oh, I remember what Mike was talking about with that, or I remember what those guys were talking about with the next gen stats. And that makes it, you enjoy the game better. And that's what's so important about having things like this, because it grows the game. All these different attitudes and all these different ways of looking at things, it doesn't matter, because it's all about taking that football and putting it across that alumni stripe. That's what it really is. So.
And you know what I like for now, the modern football player, and guys, Mike, who have been in the league for a handful of years.
Yeah, just a handful.
More than a cup of coffee.
Right.
Like Mike, but especially guys coming out now, with the way that our technology is, and the NFL's mandated, every club has to have a player tracking solution for practice. So there's this health and safety component. But if you're a player in today's NFL and you subscribe to what the data can do for you in a positive way, and you believe into that, and there are teams that are super users and there's teams that aren't. But if you're a player and you have that data and you absorb it and you take it, you have the ability to protect yourself.
Raiders.
Yeah, true. But you have the ability to have a long career. Now, you got to stay healthy. But if you subscribe where you are looking at the load management, how many miles per practice, the tapering, and say, coach wants you to work at 75% on Tuesday.
Where were you with Marty Schottenheimer?
I know. I'm an old Cleveland guy. We were talking about it.
Yeah, 11 games and got killed in the playoffs because we were dead.
Some people can be TB12 and do the avocado ice cream.
Yeah.
But now in today's modern world,
I want to eat a strawberry.
I'm good with that. But that's the
He doesn't
exciting,
eat strawberries.
is that this data is going to allow guys to extend their careers, which means extend paychecks. And that's really exciting that we can take the modern technology in this brutal game, but keep guys as healthy as possible as the physical specimens that you are.
Absolutely.
We do have time for a few questions. We're not a ton, but we're a few questions. I don't want to keep you too far over, but we had such a good time on this panel. I want to open it up to you guys. Raise your hand, nice and high.
All right.
People back there with some questions.
I was going to say, get ready, we're going to turn the lights on, but they beat me to it. I had someone text me who's watching the program.
Yeah, that's
said it's like we're watching an awesome live post-game show.
Great, I'll do
All right,
post-game
let's
with
go
that.
ideas. Let's do it. All right.
Yeah, raise your hand.
Live.
Got somebody in a Chiefs jersey. We'll go.
Yeah.
Great shirt. Great shirt.
So I wanted to ask, I heard a lot about practice and maybe training camp and trying to make sure players stay healthy. Is there any data emerging for teams to kind of look at position battles and get some empirical evidence about this player versus that player? Because there's really no PFF for training camp.
I mean, yes. Checking, player speed and GPS and things like that and hydration. Now, back in the day, you might have been able to, maybe have a practice where you're not running as hard, but now you have to reach top end speed depending on what position group or what speed or usage you're going to throughout the practice. So, yes, 100%.
Yeah, it's all internal to the teams. They're not really sharing that data, but I can tell you, the time when teams want that player tracking data the most is in the mini camps and the training camps, because that's too when you really need to look at the load management. You don't want to over exert guys, injuries, but then also it's all about the evaluation. What does your 3-step look like? How fast can you run this 10-yard route? Because that's the difference between first downs and not.
And teams are also scouting other teams in this time. So when you get to that time, when you get the cut down time, and you're maybe missing, there was a team last year in your division that had like a bajillion corners, which means you probably have no corners. And they were looking at other teams, brought people in last minute based on some of the data they had seen from, preseason games.
All right, we have a question midway back in the room.
What role, if any, have analytics been playing when it comes to protecting players from injury, and particularly head and brain injury?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, to me, it's been a lot more research and been a lot more prevalent the last, 5 to 7 years. We're now wearing, extra protective equipment in practice.
You remember that big helmet with like
Yeah.
the stuff on it? Yeah, looks like
Yeah.
a big like a
marshmallow helmet.
Yeah. So now, actually,
Look like a zoo.
now we're mandated.
You guys don't remember that guy?
Now we're mandated by the PA and our clubs to either wear that in practice or we have to have a designated helmet that has been tested over this offseason. So everyone across the league, if they're not wearing that little mushroom, has to get a new helmet to wear. It's been tested and the best and the greatest in the family.
Zebra has empowered something we call the digital athlete at the NFL league office, and the health and safety department takes all of that information extremely seriously.
Yes.
And they're really looking in every single aspect of the game. They'll be like, every second and 15 or more, like super granular data to try to figure out not just the right helmet to wear, not just the right, all of these different recommendations for teams, because these are not just the 96 of the most 100 watched broadcasts last year and anything were all NFL games,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. Those 4 were like the Oscars, huge events other than that, right? So you do not want to see anything like anything bad happen to anyone. You want the best players on the field at any time against the best players on the field at any time. And that's the digital athlete.
Yeah.
They really have done a lot of
The NFL is doing an impressive job of looking towards the future and the health and safety of the current players and into the future.
Yeah.
You're starting to see even commercials on game day about what the NFL is doing. So it is a great thing.
And it's a violent sport, so they're doing
The reason why the kickoff play got pretty much taken away is because they had so much data
Yes.
on it, and it was true. Like
That's what you're
people
losing.
were getting hurt and getting severely hurt, and that's why they kept changing the rules and pretty much taking it away. And now we're going to try a new way.
And to Cynthia's point, they're getting to the point where they're looking at the helmet, the concussions. Did that helmet get a crack? Does it need to be retired? It's almost a Carfax on the helmet. The same thing with the shoulder pads and now with the cleats. And they're holding the OEMs accountable that if they see a ankle roll in the Chiefs practice and it happens in Cleveland,
equipment managers.
and it's at the Bills, then they're going to pick up the phone and talk to that shoe manufacturer and say, hey, we need to have a further study about the product of this cleat.
Yeah, it's tremendously. I can't tell you the number of those trainings you do for your work to stay compliant. I have so many compliance trainings on them, maybe almost as many as gambling. That's so many.
Feel for you.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question from a virtual attendee, Anthony. He asks, are the analytics used in professional football checked and verified for a predictability outcome? In other words, do they ever prove to be wrong?
You mean do we do a stat correction?
I think
Sure.
about predictability.
I'm not
We're
sure
talking
what
about
it
the game predictability. That's probably the only stat that we don't really go by.
I think a lot of the fun ones, like EPA, meaning expected points added, the ones that we talk about in broadcasts, those aren't used by teams.
Yeah.
But I will say they're checked in terms of the number of pressures.
Yeah.
That's double, triple, quadruple checked.
Yeah.
The number, the raw materials to make the recipe for some of these, there's some that we have expected rushing yards, stuff like that. That stuff that's all conjectured. Let's just use, it's TV talk, right? But the other stuff, the actual stuff that they're measuring, it is so lock solid correct. That speed is right down to the 100th of a.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's really interesting. I was going to ask this question. With analytics, especially some of these 4th down situations, you got Mike and Chris that are just dominating the line of scrimmage. It's 4th down and 3 or 4th down and 4 in your own 45. The analytics are saying you got to go for it, but really,
wait.
is standing
You're
there.
already wrong there, in my opinion.
The coach,
Not
the
based
coach
on
is saying, the coach is saying, oh, our analytics at this point say, hey, we need to go for it on this situation. But the reality is that the 1 technique and the 3 technique are destroying people inside. We're not getting any yardage. You're not doing anything. So how does that work out?
If your analytics say that, then they're wrong. When you hear it on TV, it's ESPN. We're outsiders. As an outsider, the observability, I don't know what was called. I don't know where the off-ball linebacker was supposed to be. We have no idea, right? As an insider, what the Chiefs have, they have a much different model. So I'll use the Lions because I'm very familiar with this and I'm allowed to talk about this, but they have a playbook this thick on fourth down plays. That was their identity more than it was some like 8-year study of what should happen in this particular situation. That was who Dan Campbell wanted to be. They practiced fourth down. Their psychology of it was it made third down different because fourth down was expected to be different. But for example, hopefully a team like Kyle Shanahan wouldn't go against them.
So I guess that's why the Charger / LA Charger, San Diego Charger coach got fired because on Monday night against the Chiefs, he kept going for it on 4th down and 1 on the 1 yard line.
I think it's probably because
and it was all
Raiders put a
analytics they were
60-burger
talking
on
about,
him.
right?
Yeah, so
right,
I
Mike?
mean,
that.
How many times did they go for it and they didn't make it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And it cost them.
But I don't think that was
And
analytics.
it cost them the season.
That was
Execute.
Yeah, you're talking about Brandon Staley. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the funny thing about him was he was actually extremely sort of did what the recommend model would have said on 4th down his first season, and then he kind of like backtracked a lot because he got some criticism. I think, and we're talking about 4th downs, and this is always brought up. I think, analysts or people like me who build these types of models sometimes can be a little bit overconfident and say, oh, this is like as more clear cut, and we don't always think about everything that's could influence it, but also at the same time, that's why we always try to do things and we try to ground things and like, hey, you know what? It would make sense to go for it if you had at least this % chance of getting it. And you know what? The NFL so hey, on this 4th and 3, it's worth it if we think we have at least a 30% chance. The math works out.
Yes.
We just need a 30% chance. And you know what? The league average is 60. So you can like throw all your variables out there. There's no way you don't have at least a 30% chance. And that's like kind of where you have to explain some of that to the coach, where you can say, this is like so clear cut. There's no way, it's on you if you call a bad play, but there's no way that it's not at least viable to go for it. Or, hey, this is kind of more like on the edge, like depending on, hey, someone's hurt, or hey, we can't stop them here, then maybe it's your call.
Right.
And then there's ones that are like, no, don't ever go for it. So there's kind of like those 3 kind of tiers that I think as an analyst, you got to communicate that to the head coach or the offensive play caller and say, this is a maybe your call, this is a yes, this is a no.
we can have different models and with the same data. So like Dr. Professor and I can have the same, we've used the same data and we've come up with different models. And it really comes down to, just like he said, the communication. So like I've helped create a 4th down model for a team. And what I think is the beauty of it is that we created it in June when the coach is very calm and he can look at past film and he's not in the heat of the moment and all riled up and excited or whatever. But then he can say, hey, my right tackle's been getting pummeled. This is not going to work for me, because it's just a framework, right? Exactly. So even if my framework says this is fringe, then I have to decide.
So there's still feel involved.
Oh, of course. But ideally, you would create this model when you're right now. Namaste.
Yeah, you have to ground it in base rates, essentially, right? Yeah. So if it's questionable or on the edge, then you definitely should consider this stuff. But if it's like, like I said, 60% of the time the NFL team would convert this play, and like we only need 30% for it to make sense, then even if our right tackle's hurt, well, maybe we don't go up to the
Mike,
run it at the right.
I expect you next year when you're kicking somebody's butt up front and they go for it on 4th down, say, hey, the analytics are wrong.
Are you going to stop the
we've
tush
converted
push?
him. He's not an analytics.
That's it. Now we should talk about that. That should be illegal.
Tush push. Yeah.
That's where the analytics are correct about that.
You don't have to face Jason Kelce anymore. So
yeah, thank you. It was more Dickerson. He was like,
All right, we're a little past the time. Let's do 2 more questions.
All right, so you made a little tongue-in-cheek comment about ChatGPT, but is there a potential future for generative AI? And if so, are there any safeguards in place to ensure that one team does not buy out an AI company and just sit on it?
Well, let me just tell you that second part in advance. You have to disclose, and you can't buy something to the exclusion of other things. You can be the first, but you can't be you can't safeguard. You could build it in your own place, but you can't, if I have PFF, then every other team's allowed to have it too. It's their choice, but you can't buy all of PFF and make it exclusive. But go ahead to the rest of it.
So, there is a lot of talk about AI, and it's already out there. And if you watch the Amazon broadcast, for example, they've got machine learning. They're doing generative AI. They take the RFID data, but it is so quick. And you should absolutely watch there's a name for the specific broadcast.
The alternate broadcast
Yes.
on Thursday night.
I think it's called Prime Vision.
Yes,
Yeah.
Prime Vision. Thank you very much. Cynthia?
Listen, I'm a shill. Let's go.
But the team, so practice data, and as we mentioned before, every team gets every team's data now. And so believe me, they are going to tap into the modern world of AI to look to break that down, to put that into their playbook. And the other important thing to note is that the real-time data that comes in on game day, the coaching staff can't get access to that. They get the video, they get the photographs, they've got the Microsoft Surfaces, but the Zebra data, they don't get that until the next morning from the NFL.
You can't use the internet during the game. So you'll never have someone call, like, ChatGPT's never.
Can't be like, what play should I run?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you did, and you told in the press conference why you didn't make it on fourth down, and you blamed
Right.
OpenAI, I think
Right.
that you'd get
Yeah.
fired.
A little bit of a problem.
But it is against the NFL rules to be able to use you can't use the internet in game.
Just like they'll still use the sticks and chains for quite a while.
Facts.
Yes.
All right, let's make this the last question.
Okay.
So it's been mentioned that analytics is new to the NFL, and we all know it's a growing and very important thing that's really taken off over the last couple of years. What level of resistance you see from coaches, players, staff, and how do you help overcome?
Hey, I'm the old curmudgeon.
Analytics.
Get off my lawn.
I think we've seen it here, right? No?
New generation.
I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Like, in the past 7 years, nothing's different. It's just one, technology makes it different, but other than that, it's not any different. It's quality control, but it's on steroids because it can go faster. And the ability to leverage the nerds or not is really how good of a question you ask. Garbage in, garbage out. If I don't know what I want or why I want to know it, then no one can help me with it anyways. So at the end of the day, a tool's only as good as the workman who does it, right? I don't know, that's not a good analogy, but whatever. If you don't use the tool correctly, it's not going to work for you in any way. So at the end of the day, it's just more, and more doesn't always mean better, it just means more.
Look, if you look at an NFL media guide, they already have 1,000 employees on the staff. But again, if you go 10 years ago to what it is to now for their data analytics team or sports science, I mean, it is its own department that some teams really invest in.
Yep.
Some teams don't invest as much. Tool in the toolbox, and then good coaching and execution.
And by the way, one of the things, like the unsung hero of analytics, I think, in football is when it comes to scouting. Right now, scouting is a cluster between NIL, the transfer portal. I mean, these kids, like this year, there were kids who were 20 and kids who were 26 in the same draft class. That's a huge age range, and your body is different. Into like all crazy stuff. So if you're looking at a lot of these scouts now, they're not just like regional. My regional scout is really good at defensive end, right? Like you have to be great at everything and figure it out because these kids are like shake it up and they just end up a lot of different places. They're not really as staying in one place anymore as often. So I think the unsung hero there is the analytics can help create a shared framework and a shared lexicon so that you can really get the most out of scouting.
I feel like there hasn't been any resistance to it. I feel like maybe the name is different. Maybe it's more prevalent because of media and everything that's coming about and more money into the game. But you made a great point earlier that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of the success of Bill Belichick was him and Ernie. That was his. A lot of people, unless you know football, you don't know who Ernie is. But
Google him.
Yeah.
Ernie Adams.
He is the mastermind behind Bill Belichick. He, gave him a lot of plays in his analytics, and he was a person in his ear that he actually trusted. And Coach Reed has somebody like that as well. So when you say, would there be any, resistance to it? Not at all. I feel like every great coach, has to implement new things, has to do new things to create new stats and new analytics and new tendencies.
Yeah, I mean, in my career, I've experienced some resistance, but I think it's more just
Same.
more just communication barriers, and everyone's always afraid of someone telling them what to do or if they don't understand something, and it's always just about good communication. It's like if I walked into an NFL locker room and I try to tell Mike here how he should play defensive line, he's going to naturally be like, who are you, And, but if I was like, hey, I did this all the time at ESPN, we'd make new metrics, and we have ESPN, there's lots of former players that are on TV, and we'd often just Dominic Foxworth was one of our go-to people, and it'd be like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Can we show you some plays and show our models? And you tell us if this makes sense, and we'd get that feedback. And I think analysts over the years have gotten a lot better at incorporating the experts in the room, the football players, the coaches, the GMs, into their analysis. And then there are like the young ones that always are coming up and have yet to learn that lesson. But I think the players and the coaches themselves are also much more willing now to be like, hey, this is a useful tool. If I can educate this person, he can educate me back, and it's a much better place than it was even 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, I think three things. Number one, analytics has really helped the health of a current player.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, we talked about it with the CTE thing. I mean, we used to just go out there. You got your bell rung. It was a badge of honor. Go back out. Now with analytics, they can see what your hit rate was and what how the brain reacted and all those things in real time. Number two, the game is much better. It's much faster. It's a wonderful thing to watch. And if analytics is helping that, then it's good for the game. It's good for everybody. And number three, us older guys, every generation, Ed Buddy, I used to have Ed Buddy come in and we'd watch film with Ed Buddy. And Ed would say, hey, we'd talk about little things. We'd like, well, that's pretty antiquated what you're saying, but it makes some sense. And I'm sure it's the same thing if I was sitting with Mike or sitting with Creed and saying, hey, look for this. Oh, that's pretty interesting, but it's kind of antiquated. Everything develops, everything gets better, and the game is so healthy. And because of people like we have on this stage that have given this game just that extra boost, that extra adrenaline, that extra excitement, and that's what it's all about. And it makes everything so much easier and better to watch. So I'm very blessed and very happy to have been involved with this. I don't know anything about the analytics. And guess what? I never will. But
I'm going to take it as a major win that you didn't air quote that use of analytics. I'm taking that as a win right there.
Yeah, I've air quoted quite a few things. But the reality is that, the NFL is so healthy and doing so well, and analytics is a big part of that.
Yeah.
She's going to clip all of her segments and email them to you every week now.
I'll just give you an NFL Plus subscription. Don't worry about it. It's always Chief game previews because the Chiefs are good. So there's always one in there. You get the next-gen stats on the Chiefs. I can't thank all of you enough for making the time and spending some extra minutes with us tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure I can speak for everyone on this panel in saying that. Not only do we love football, and the Chiefs are so much fun to talk about. Now I have a new favorite player, and a new favorite former player too, right? There we go. Thank you so much, and have a great night. All right.
Tim, the title of the program is Technology and Tradition. You brought the tradition.
I brought the
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you, Cynthia, Adam, Mike, Paul, and Tim. And thank you, everyone, for attending tonight.
Hey, thanks.
Check out lindahall.org for future events.